Welcome to this episode on entrepreneurship development. In this episode, we will look at some of the statutory provisions which are very important and they should be known to the entrepreneur who wants to run a factory or any kind of a business. And there are several rules and laws enacted for the purpose of running a factory or doing a business. In particular, what we will talk about in this episode is what is known as the Factories Act. And it's a very important act from the point of view of the entrepreneur because he needs to know what are the different provisions and objectives laid down in that act so that he can practice those in the factory that he would run. Now, this Factories Act came into force in the year 1949, although the act was enacted in the year 1948, and it was enacted with a view to remove the anomalies and the defects that were found to exist in the previous Factories Act, which was formed in the year 1934. So it really came into force in 1949, and the basic objectives of the Act were laid down, which are as follows. The first objective of the Factories Act 1948 was to regulate the working condition of the workers in the factory. Okay? How to regulate the working condition of all those people who would work in a factory. And the second objective was to ensure that the basic requirements of safety, health, and welfare of the factory workers are also provided by the owner of the factory. I repeat, the second objective was to ensure the basic requirements for the safety, health, and welfare of the workers who would be employed by the factory would be provided by the entrepreneur who would run that factory. So these are the two basic and the big objectives of the Act, and all the statutory provisions therein fall in line with the objectives of the Act. Now let's look at what is the scope and coverage of the Act. The Act extends to the whole of India first of all and is applicable to all factories, which includes even the factories run by the government. Okay? Not only private factories, but also the factories run by the government. Before we go deeper into the provisions, let's look at a very important definition of what is a factory. In fact, the Act goes ahead and defines a factory, and it says that according to this Act, a factory is any premises, including the area surrounded by the boundary walls thereof, wherein 10 or more workers are employed on any working day of the preceding 12 months, and a manufacturing process is carried on with the aid of power. I'll repeat this part. A factory is any premises, including the boundary walls within which the factory is supposed to be there, where 10 or more workers have been employed on any day of the preceding 12 months, and a manufacturing process is on with the aid of power, or where there are 20 or more workers who are employed on any working day of the previous 12 months, where a manufacturing process is being carried on without the aid of power. So if you are utilizing power for the process of manufacturing, you could do with 10 workers or more. Minimum is 10 workers working for the last 12 months, or any working day on the last 12 months. Or if you are not using power, then it could be 20 workers or more who are running some kind of a manufacturing process without the input of power. Okay, so that is what the definition of a factory is according to the Act. Now, with this definition of the factory, we move on to some other definitions which have been laid down in the Act. Like it goes on to define what kind of manpower would be used by the factory. It defines who will be called an adult. So according to section 2A of the Act, an adult refers to a person who has completed 18 years of age. Okay. It also goes on to describe a child. According to section 2C of the Factories Act 1948, a child is one who is yet to complete his 15th year of age. Clear? And there is someone called an adolescent in between. And according to this Act, an adolescent is a person who has completed his 15th year of age, so he is more than a child, but has yet to complete his 18th year of age, so he is not an adult as of now. So he is in between. So with these three definitions of adult, child, and adolescent, Then it also defines what should be the calendar year for a factory. A calendar year, according to this act, means a period of 12 months beginning with the first day of January in any year. So the calendar year starts with January 1st. Okay.
So a calendar year is different from a financial year.
It is different from the financial year, yes, according to the act. Okay, now let's get inside the act and understand what are the provisions it lays down in order to fulfill the objectives of the act. Now, if you look at, as we said, we had said this before, that the most important objectives of the act are to look at the basic working conditions of the workers, to ensure safety for them, to ensure that their health is not put to danger, and it also should bring about welfare on the part of the workers who are employed in the factory. So let's see what's there in the act which provides for the health of the factory workers. Okay. See, there are a large number of provisions therein, and see, basically it is to do with, it's saying that it is the duty of the employer to ensure that the health of the workers are looked after properly. So these relate to things like cleanliness, disposal of industrial waste and effluents, ventilation inside the factory premises, control of temperature inside the factory premises or in the workrooms, artificial humidification if that is necessary, elimination of dust and fumes arising out of the industrial process, avoidance of overcrowding in the work areas, provision of proper lighting so that people can see what they are working on, provision of drinking water facilities, and also provision of proper sanitation facilities like latrines and urinals and spittoons will have to be provided at suitable places. So it looks into all of these aspects and it tries to detail out how these should be provided. See, first of all, it again goes into definitions and says what is cleanliness? What is it that the employer or the entrepreneur needs to do by way of ensuring cleanliness in the factory premises? Now the act states that every factory shall be kept clean and free from effluents arising from any drainage system whatsoever. Okay. And the following precautions need to be taken in particular. It says that there would be accumulation of dust and dirt, and they should all be removed by sweeping or any other method from the floor and the benches of the workrooms, even from the staircases and passages, and disposed of in an appropriate manner. So no accumulation of dust or dirt would be allowed in the factory premises. There has to be an arrangement to sweep and clean the floors and the work areas and disposal of dust and dirt. It also says that the floor of every workroom shall be cleaned at least once in every week with the use of water, using disinfectants. Okay. So it really goes into very good amount of detail and says that the floor also has to be cleaned at least once every week by using water along with disinfectants. If the floor becomes wet during the process of manufacturing, there should be provision for proper drainage of the water that gets spread on the floor. That also has been provided for. All the inside walls, partitions and ceilings of the workplace and the sides and tops of the staircases and passages should be repainted or revarnished at least once in every 3 years. Again, they are giving a time frame. All the partitions, ceilings, walls and all those will have, including those in the staircases and the passages, should be repainted and revarnished once at least in every 3 years. If they are painted with washable paint, they should be repainted with at least one coat of such paint at least once in every period of 3 years, and also should be washed at least once in every period of 6 months. So you cannot do whatever you want. You have to maintain these rules in the factory. You have to provide for cleanliness, which is going to cater to better health of the workforce. Fine. All the doors, window frames and other wooden or metallic framework and shutters should be painted or varnished at least once in a period of 5 years. So the window fittings and the doors fittings all have to be painted at least once every 5 years. And the date on which the process of cleaning or painting or varnishing has been carried out shall be entered in a prescribed register, so that there is someone called a chief inspector of factories who would come on a visit and he would ask for that register, and he would look into the entries made in the register and make sure that the work has actually been done.
Excuse me, sir. Is
Yeah.
the chief inspector appointed by the government or appointed by the?
He is a government functionary. In fact, he is a representative of the government who is empowered to visit factories and take a large number of decisions. And he can also, force the employer or the entrepreneur to fall in line with the provisions of the act as he deems fit. So he has got the complete authority as far as this is concerned.
So can these cleaning processes be handled by a third party appointed by the factory?
That is quite possible. That is possible. But then the duty of the entrepreneur does not go away. He will have to ensure that whether he does it by employing his own manpower or appoints a third party to do it, but it will have to be done within that time frame, and an entry in that register will have to be made for the inspector to be able to find out whether it has been done or not.
So he is accountable.
He is accountable. The entrepreneur is accountable for the cleanliness within the factory premises. Regarding the disposal of waste and effluents, that's another part of the Act. Section 12 of the Act deals with it. It states that regarding the disposal of waste and effluents, the state governments are required to make rules, for effective arrangement for disposal of the manufacturing waste or effluent. Here it makes the state government accountable, and the state government is in a position which is in fact is empowered to frame rules as to how the effluents will have to be disposed and in what manner, what technology will have to be used, and what will measure the yardstick of cleanliness or disposal of waste and effluents have been done properly. The state government can enact rules in that area. Okay. So there are the pollution control boards who will come into the scene, and they would ensure that the industrial effluents which have been generated are being treated first of all and disposed of in a manner that's acceptable to the pollution control boards. So these provisions will become allied with the provisions in the Factories Act. The Act also talks about ventilation and temperature, I told you. Because when you're going to ensure good working conditions inside the factory, you need to look at ventilation and temperature. Now it says that adequate ventilation for the circulation of fresh air in the workroom, either by natural ventilation through windows or doors and ventilators, or by artificial means such as electric fans, will have to be provided. So there you will have to maintain a steady flow of fresh air inside the work area so that people don't feel suffocated while working. You cannot have a very cramped place where there is no proper ventilation. You cannot have that. Even if you don't have proper natural ventilation, you have to make provisions for it by installing electric fans and things like that. Okay. The temperature also should be kept at a level comfortable for the workers, and it will be congenial for them to carry out the kind of work they are supposed to be doing, in that work area. Walls and the roofs of the work area shall be of such material and of such design so that the temperature inside is kept quite comfortable and cool. Especially keeping in mind that the fact that there are several places in the country where the temperatures rise very high in summer, and it may be quite difficult to work under such sultry conditions. So you have to do something in order to bring down the temperature inside the work area. Okay. It also goes on to talk about how to deal with the dust and fumes which would be generated in the process of the industrial activity. And Section 14 of the Act states that if required, exhaust appliances should be installed as near as possible to the point of origin of such dust and fumes or other impurities, and such points should be kept closed and covered as far as possible. It is quite likely that many industrial activities will have dust and fumes being generated as a result of the activity, and there has to be a proper disposal of the fumes and dusts out of the work area so that people do not feel congested, and people do not have to cough and feel irritated with the dust and fumes rising thereof. And exhaust fans possibly will have to be installed at appropriate places and close to the point of origin of the fumes, and many of the fumes can even be hazardous to the health of the workforce. It also talks about something called artificial humidification. The point is, as I said, some parts of the country are quite sultry in summer, and therefore you will have to think about what is the humidity in the air that is available in the work area. And it says that the factories where there is humidity, a state government may make rules prescribing the standard of humidification. okay, and conduct tests for determining the humidity of the air and provide adequate ventilation and cooling of the air in the workrooms. So see, every effort is being made, or the Act tries to make sure that the workers do not feel uncomfortable while carrying out the work assigned to them inside the factory.
So does it also depend on the nature of job undertaken by
Obviously,
the
it
workers?
would. Obviously, it would. There would be heavy work. There can be light work. People who are doing very heavy physical menial work would suffer more on account of high temperatures, and so for them it's all the more required that you maintain temperatures at a lower level or you have proper ventilation. But people who are doing less than physical work, or it's not so physically demanding on them, they could do with a lesser amount of provision of such things. But then the point is, the Factories Act goes into detail on each of these. What kind of industrial activity would call for what kind of ventilation,
Yes, it
etc.
depends upon it varies upon industry to industry
That's
and the
right.
products manufactured in the different type industries.
That is right. So we are looking at the basic outlines of the Act. We are not going into too much of detail, but then if you want to look into detail, there would be further detail subdividing the activity into, depending on what kind of industrial activity is being carried out. Okay, let's continue, and we say that it also looks into how to avoid overcrowding. As we said that if you put too many workers in a work area, people may not be able to work properly. People would get into each other's way, and there will be hardly any work area left to individual workers. So how can you avoid that kind of overcrowding? The section 16 of the Act says that no room in any factory shall be overcrowded to the extent of its being injurious to the health of the workers employed therein. Okay, you cannot pack 100 people in a small room and get them to do work. You have to understand that. To prevent overcrowding, the Act provides that in every workroom, a worker should be provided with space, individual space, to the extent of 9.9 cubic meters. In fact, it specifies a figure, 9.9 cubic meters in old factories and 14.2 cubic meters of space in new factories. So this takes care of overcrowding. On an average, an individual worker should be entitled to so much of space for his work to be done smoothly. Okay. The Chief Inspector of Factories can also prescribe the maximum number of workers who will be allowed to work in a given workroom. It is his discretion also, which will come into play. So overcrowding has to be taken care of. Next, we look at another provision, that is regarding the illumination and lighting within the factory premises. Now here the Act, in fact the section 17 of the Act states that in every part of the factory where workers are working or they pass through in the course of their work, there shall be provided and maintained sufficient and suitable lighting, natural or artificial or both. Okay. That means some work area may be quite naturally illuminated because there are big windows at doors through which natural light would come in, but then it will not depend on natural illumination alone. It will also have the provision for artificial illumination. The state government is to prescribe the standards of sufficient and suitable illumination for the different classes of factories. Again, as you were saying, it could be different from one kind of work to another. Some work which needs very small things to be assembled or worked on would need more illumination, and maybe where you are working with big things, the illumination need not be as intense as it is required for a small object being assembled. So it will vary from kind of work you are doing to another, and the illumination will have to be adjusted accordingly. That is where the Act says it will have to look into the kind of work and set up suitable kind of arrangements for illuminating the workplace. We keep talking about the different provisions. Let's talk about the arrangement for drinking water. That's another very important provision in the Act. In a country like ours, there is hardly any need to emphasize the importance of proper drinking water being available, and uninterrupted supply of proper and pure drinking water for the workforce. After all, industrial activity can be very tiring and people would feel very thirsty quite often, and therefore the section 18 of the Factories Act 1948 states that effective arrangements are to be made so as to provide and maintain at suitable points sufficient supply of drinking water. All such points should be clearly marked drinking water. You have to say that right clearly at those points where drinking water is available in the regional language. so that workers who are employed, they will be able to read and understand if they know how to read. And at every such point, or rather every such point of drinking water should be situated at least more than 6 meters away from any washing place, urinals or latrines. Okay, that is also another point that's there in the Act. The drinking water needs to be kept very distant from places where the workers would wash their clothes or do some kind of washing of the utensils they eat with, okay, and all that. And it should definitely have to be removed at least 6 meters away from the toilets where the workers would visit, okay, unless shorter distance is approved by the Chief Inspector of Factories looking into the circumstances, okay. Drinking water supplied from sources other than the municipal water supply will have to be approved by competent authority. If you do not supply proper drinking water supplied by the municipal authorities, then you have to, in case you are going to make alternative arrangement for supply of drinking water, then the source and the quality of that water will have to be approved by the competent authority that it is fit for drinking. Only then it will be allowed to be used by the factory workers for drinking purposes, otherwise not. Drinking water should be made available during the working hours and also must be stored to the extent of 1 gallon per day at least. Okay, you will not only make drinking water available, you should also have proper facility for storing drinking water of at least 1 gallon per day. Factories employing 250 workers or more should supply cold drinking water during summer. Okay.
So, regarding that 1 gallon per day, regardless of the size of the factory and the number of workers.
No, there would be provisions connecting it with the size of the factory, I think, but then that detail we are not going into. But at least even the small, even something like 250 workers working, you would have to have at least 1 gallon of storage per day for the drinking water is what is said here. There will be more detail to that, and we are not going into all that detail. But then important point is we are trying to understand. See, the Act is trying to look into and safeguarding the interest of the worker. It should not run out of drinking water. Suppose the supply is interrupted for whatever reason, then there's no drinking water available in the factory. That will not be allowed to happen. There should be a fallback option that in case there is a supply cut off for whatever emergency purpose, there should be a fallback option in the form of a storage place for drinking water, at least to the tune of 1 gallon per day, so that people can make do with that arrangement temporarily. And as I said, factories employing more than 250 workers or 250 or more workers will have to make provisions for cooling the water for supply to the workers. So there have to be coolers and things like that installed in a factory with so many workers. It goes on to talk about the conservancy arrangement, and there's a particular section, the section 19 of the Factories Act states that separate arrangements should be made for male and female workers with regard to conservancy. In every factory where more than 250 workers are employed, toilets of prescribed sanitary types should be provided at convenient places accessible to the workers at any time while they are in the factory. Okay, so it's to do with the provision of toilets and restrooms in the proper places. In fact, it goes into further details saying that the floor internal walls up to a height of 90 centimeters will have to be laid with glazed tiles in a toilet like that. Okay, these walls should be thoroughly washed and cleaned at least once in every 7 days with suitable detergents and or disinfectants or both. Sweepers will have to be employed so as to keep the toilets and the workplace clean. So it's not merely the question of provision of toilets. You have to look into the sanitation facilities and the quality of the sanitation facilities available. You'll have to ensure that the glazed tiles are provided on the floor and on the side walls up to a height of 90 centimeters, which could be washed and cleaned with water using detergents or disinfectants. Sweepers will have to be engaged so that these are maintained in proper clean conditions. It goes into a lot of detail. It talks about the provision of spittoons. People spit, if you allow workers to spit anywhere in the factory premises, it'll become a mess. So it goes into that detail also, and there's a section 20 of the Act says that sufficient number of spittoons should be provided in every factory, and these should be maintained in a clear and hygienic condition. Factories, you know that in many parts of the country, people chew betel leaves and all kinds of pan masalas and all those, and people are in the habit of spitting here and there. especially the working class who are not so well educated in hygiene and civic sense and all that. They would spit anywhere and make the factory floor unclean, and that could even make the machinery etc. be affected as a result. So the Act provides for specific areas where the person can go and spit if he has a requirement, and those will also have to be maintained in a clean and hygienic condition. Fine, I think these are some of the. In fact, there is a fine also. There is a penalty levied on somebody who is found to violate these rules. If a worker is found to violate a rule as far as like spitting is concerned, he would be even penalized, and there's a small fine that he has to pay for this, so that he will be careful the next time. So these are some of the provisions which are prescribed on the Factories Act 1948 regarding the health of the worker in a factory.
So, aren't there any provisions for any first aid boxes?
Yes, there are. In fact, what we have talked about so far are mostly to deal with the environment of work. Okay, how they can provide for health of the workers. These are trying to cater to the health conditions of the workers in the factory. Now, obviously, another aspect which you are mentioning, like somebody meets with an injury in the course of his work, there has got to be first aid options available, and there are provisions devoted to that. We will come to that. But then we'll come to it a little later in a different section or a different episode, because it's quite a huge act and there are plenty of provisions trying to take care of all these aspects. Now, this would take a lot of discussion, and there are many more provisions in the act. I think we have run out of time for this episode. We come back and discuss more about other provisions of the Factories Act in yet another episode.